Backseas Musical Podcast.
In 1980, the British new wave band Department S released a single called Is Vic There? The single reached number 22 on the UK charts, and more singles would follow, but by the time Department S was ready to release their debut album, the band broke up, and that album, entitled Substance, would go unreleased for 14 years, 3 years after the death of lead singer Vaughn Toulouse at the age of 33. That album had been produced by David Tickle, the same David Tickle that worked on Blondie's Parallel Lines in 1978, and in retrospect, the album would have been likely seen as a post-punk new wave classic. At the very least, this lost album sparked a renewed interest in Department S, leading some to wonder what would have happened if the record had been released on time, and what would have happened had the band stuck together long enough to make that happen. Since the release of that album in 1994, the band has reformed several times, and in fact, Department S has just released a new single called Burn Down Tomorrow, and a new album will be out sometime in 2023. The new lead singer and guitar player for that band is Phil Thompson. Phil Thompson would describe himself as somewhat of a musical journeyman because he's not only the lead singer for Department S, he's also been the guitar player for the Rezillos, the Scottish punk band whose roots extend all the way back to 1976. Phil Thompson joined that band in 2018, but that's not all. He's also been a touring member for the Vapors, the band that released I'm Turning Japanese the very same year that Department S released their biggest selling single. So yeah, Phil Thompson is involved in an awful lot of stuff. In fact, that's kind of an understatement. So it's my pleasure to welcome Phil Thompson of Department S, the Rezillos, and the Vapors as my guest today on Backseas Musical Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very, very good. I've been listening to the new single for a better part of the week since you and I first connected on Facebook. This song is fantastic. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that. It is such a catchy, great song. Burn Down Tomorrow. It makes me excited to hear what the rest of the album sounds like. If this is any indication, I'm really excited about it.
But we are really, really, really pleased with it and the rest of the album. You know, it was an obvious track to release first because it is kind of a punchy kind of thing. Some of the tracks on there are a little bit not like that. I personally, and I would say this, I think all of it is kind of the best thing we've ever done. Really pleased with it.
I listened to a bunch of the older stuff from Department S, and it's, while I love it, I hear this song and I'm thinking, okay, this is really true to form for that band, and holds up as well as maybe any song that band had done, even back in the early '80s. I mean, it's a real strong kick right out of the gate.
It's a tricky. It's something we're always conscious of because the band, the early stuff, it still is so good. It stands up so well that when you're playing in a band with the heritage like that, you don't want to do anything that's substandard. You kind of, you're constantly thinking it's got to be good because it's Department S, so it has to be.
The band is one of those bands that has got a really interesting story behind it. I mean, it released a couple of singles. Is Vic There is the big hit. There are a couple others, and then all of a sudden, the band breaks up and the album gets shelved for, I think it was almost, a dozen years, 14 years, whatever it wound up being. And then suddenly it comes out. And if you listen to it, you realize this is like one of those great lost classics that should have been a huge album. And unfortunately was lost for years. I mean, not being an original member of the band, I'm sure you must have a little bit of insight into what did happen back then with that first record.
Yeah, I think it was just such a shame. And I have spoke to, the three main original members of Mike Herbage, the guitar player, Stuart Mizzen on the drums, and Vaughn, of course, who sadly, Vaughn Toulouse, very charismatic, excellent lyric writer who sadly passed away in the early 90s. And I spoke to Mike Herbage about this particularly, and he said, we were just young and we didn't really know what we're doing. We took some bad advice. They signed to Stiff Records here in the UK, just as Stiff were kind of on a down sort of spiral. And he said, we should never have done that. It was just the wrong thing to do at the time. We had the album recorded, and then suddenly I think there were problems within the band as well with people not or sort of not agreeing about what, it's the age-old thing, isn't it? Musical differences, not agreeing which way they should be going. And before you knew it, when I spoke to Mike, he said we should have took the album somewhere else and said, look, here we are, we're Department S, and we've got this album. Because Stiff didn't do anything with it at all. And he said and then suddenly we'd split up, and then that was that, and then it was never going to come out. And it wasn't, as you say, till about 15 years later, obviously massively after the fact, that it came out. And I think a lot of people who heard it then sort of went, oh, this is, these guys had this in, and it's almost like one of rock, there are many rock and roll sort of real shame stories, and this is just one of them. And I didn't realize this until sort of fairly recently. It was produced by a guy called Dave Tickle, who in his early sort of production career, but he went on to do stuff with U2 and the Police and Prince, and so he clearly knew what he was doing, and he somehow managed to coax this album out of Department S. That it was just such a shame that nobody heard it. And even now, because it didn't come out for that amount of time, and it was sort of got a reasonably limited release when it was released, it's still not a massively heard album by people. It's such a shame.
It is a shame. And what's so interesting about it is when you hear a guy like David Tickle, who's had such a great career, and in fact I think like 2 years before that record was recorded, he had done Parallel Lines from Blondie, which was a huge hit.
Yeah,
and
I think he was an engineer on that.
And to think that, because so here's a guy who worked on something that stuck with him for 14 years in his head, saying, man, I wish that had come out. I mean, that really says something. Here's a guy who felt passionate enough about that record to say, we have got to get this into the public's hands at some point. It's a record that is so totally worth pursuing. It's just fantastic.
Absolutely, I agree.
So
I would.
So how did you get involved in the band?
I know the Department S story just keeps getting more and more checkered as time goes on. Right, I got involved initially when the band first reformed. Mike Herbage was playing guitar in the band, but he sort of couldn't commit to it. He had a young family, fairly late in life, and late in life, that sounds terrible. Don't mean it like that, but he had a young family at the time when the band got back together, so he couldn't really commit to touring. And at the time, I don't know if you're aware of a UK band called the Ruts, now Ruts DC.
I do.
Babylon's Burning, blah blah blah. Well,
that's another band with an amazingly sad story.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm particularly friendly with Lee Hegarty, who now plays guitar with Ruts DC, because obviously their original guitar player has died, and Lee plays with them now, and he's a friend of mine. And Lee was kind of filling in for Department S when Mike couldn't do it. Now, my history prior to joining Department S has always been I kind of play guitar but fronted bands as well. No one you'd ever heard of, bands that are kind of sort of wannabe kind of thing on the scene at the time. And I played in quite a lot of bands. And when Lee couldn't sort of commit to a lot of the work that Department S were doing, this is back in late 2014, 2015, Lee suggested me to the guys and said, well, I know a guitarist, with him. Now, I know this isn't a massive kind of distance in the States, but the big sticking point at the time was I live, like, Department S are based in London, and I live sort of in the north of England, got some 250 miles away, and bless Lee, he did a good job in in persuading them to see me. And at the time, Eddie, who was the original keyboard player in Department S, was the vocalist, because obviously Vaughan had died. So when they got back together, Eddie was doing the singing. Now, Eddie's the guy that plays on Is Vic There, well, actually, as he always would point out, it's 4 notes, not 3. That's him on do, 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 on Is Vic There. But unfortunately, and this is just part of the Department S kind of mentally sad story, even Eddie had left the band after recording Department S, after recording Is Vic There, even before it had become a hit. But when they reformed, he became the singer. And so he was the guy that took me into the band. And at the time we had Pete Jones playing bass, who was at one stage in Public Image Limited. If you listen to This Is Not a Love Song, the single, that's Pete Jones playing bass on that. And he was bassist at the time. And I came in then basically because they had a bunch of gigs to do and they needed a guitarist. And Lee said, this guy, he can do it. So I went down to I must admit, I went down to the audition at the time, very much sort of thinking, if I just get in to go into an audition and just play that riff on Is Vic There, and then if nothing comes of it, I thought that's good enough. I'll be happy that I've done that. But it was basically the case that he said, oh well, we've got 3 gigs next month and we've got 5 gigs the month after, and yeah, you're in, sort of thing. And the rest is history. And then we did an album in 2016 called When All Is Said and All Is Done, which I wrote the title track of that, and that song's been in our live set ever since. So yeah, I just kind of hit the ground running with Department S, and here I still am.
Yeah. Now Lee is on this next album, right? He's helping you in some way.
Yes. He is. We had there's a track on the album called Whistle for the Wind, and we thought it'd be a nice idea because even after I joined, every now and then, if we did a gig and Lee was knocking about, he would always get up and we'd do a 2 guitar thing. So Lee's been around the orbit of the band forever.
Yeah.
And occasionally gets up and plays a few songs with us. So when we were recording the album, and we're like, oh, let's get Lee to play on a track. Oh, which track? And there was this section in this song called Whistle for the Wind. And I sent it to Lee, said, put something in this section, fully expecting he was going to put, so I don't know if you've heard Lee playing guitar, but he's an incredibly gifted guitar player. I thought he's going to put some like absolute mind-melting solo in it or something. He sent it back, bless him, and he really sort of listened to the tune and listened to the lyric and that, which is kind of about being all at sea, and it's kind of this kind of almost sort of seasick sort of song. And his brother had bought him one of those like a C6 Steve cigar box guitar, the kind of thing with like 2 strings on it or something. It's actually made by Rat Scabies Out of the Damned. He'd been making these things, and his brother had bought one off Rat, given it to Lee, and Lee had played this thing on our track that's this kind of weird slide sort of thing, which we've also put in the outro of the song, which took the song somewhere else as well. So Lee's a talented lad, and he kind of listens to what the song needed and thought, this doesn't need a face melting solo. What it needs is this kind of thing, which is really good to have someone really get it and do something like it.
It's funny that he's on there because I mean there's a couple other guys that helped you along too, and it's interesting that of the 3 guys I was going to mention, him playing with the Ruts, which I think The Crack was maybe one of the best albums ever released ever. And then Stephen Rice from the Chameleons, another widely underappreciated, brilliant band, and Baz Warren from the Stranglers too. Talk about like three great bands that that people should be exploring, because God, just just the crack alone by the Ruts is worth every single penny.
We could probably spend this entire interview talking about crack and the Ruts generally, and I'm such a fan, and really I shouldn't. Let's not even go down that road, because you're right. It is just like a peerless album, and I've been lucky enough to get know the guys in the band, and I'm still kind of such a fan.
Yeah,
really, of that band. But the fact that Lee's played on it and that Baz from the Stranglers, I mean, I sort of, that was kind of another wacky idea that came out in the studio. Oh, don't you know Baz Ward? Yeah. Why don't you see if Baz will play on it? And I thought, well, okay. And of course, this was kind of, I mean, I'll tell you the story of the album if you're interested, but it was during lockdown, and there was a lot of phone calls floating about. And of course, these days people can record things remotely at home and stuff. So I thought, okay, I got in touch with Baz, sort of thinking he might want to do it, he might not want to do it. But he was like, mate, I'd be honoured. And I sent him this track, and certainly within a day, he'd sent back about 6 or 7 different guitar parts for it that we used in various parts of the track. To me, it's testament to, I don't want to build this up too much, but it's testament to how the fondness that Department S are held in, that people are willing to I was touched that these guys would come and play on our stuff, but we are sort of still held in sort of fairly high regard, and a lot of that is down to how great Is Vic there is. I'm under no illusions, which is and Baz, when I spoke to him, said to me, he said, "Oh yeah, Is Vic there? It's like one of those riffs that you learn to play when you were first learning to play, and it was like in the school playground. Have you played this yet?" So to me, the fact that we've got a Chameleon, a Strangler, and a Ruts DC guy on it says we're doing something right.
You're doing without a doubt. But after all this time, I can't help but wonder: did Vic ever show up, and does he ever return his phone calls?
We are still looking for Vic. Pretty much every tour that we ever do is like, oh, is this one going to be called the Looking for Vic tour? Yeah. He still makes it. Well, people. It's funny, when I first joined the band, the guys that were in the band at the time said, "Look, one thing you need to know about this band is everyone you speak to, bunch of Department S, every social media post, everything you put up, somebody's going to go, is Vic there?" And I was like, and they were like, "No, really, you are going to get that." And we do get that. And no, we're still looking for him. Every gig, we're looking for him. Is he there? He's not turned up yet. Or her.
It almost sounds like you should try making a song that says, "Hi, it's Vic. Did I get any messages?" Let's.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm late. Yeah. Any messages for Vic? Yeah, 1 or 2.
You guys have played a lot of festival dates over the last few months. What's been, and you've been playing with some alongside some pretty notable bands too. How has the new version of Department S with the new songs played out and been accepted by audiences? I mean, they're pretty receptive to what you guys have done?
It's been really, really good. Yeah. Because obviously we've had another sort of upheaval in the band when Eddie left, basically just pretty much as we'd finished the album, which has put the release of the album back a little bit. But as you say, we've done some festival dates. We're now out as a 3-piece. And it's been really, really good. It's been really positive. People have, going back to the Is Vic there thing, we kind of have a thing in this band of like, any gig we do, there's only one person who really has to turn up or not turn up, as the case may be, and that is Vic. As long as Vic's there, it's going to be okay. But it's funny, when I joined the band myself, and obviously I knew Is Vic there. I knew the follow-up single, which was Going Left Right, and I Want was the 3rd single, and I kind of knew those tracks. But a lot of people, of course, only know Is Vic there. And I'll talk to festival audiences particularly, because you get people who just drift along and go, Department S, don't really know much about them, and go and have a look. And I'll often say to people, right, hands up, who thought Department S only had one song? And you'll get about 4 blokes at the back going, hands up, sheepishly. Like, And I'm like, that's okay, that's absolutely fine, but this is what we got. And you can just, the beauty of a band like us is that because we haven't got, it's not like with the Buzzcocks where there's kind of like 10 songs that you absolutely have to play. People will come along and they'll listen to us, and I can see them thinking, is this a really old song or is this a new song? And we often don't tell them till the end of like, what we've been playing.
It's a great idea.
We can kind of turn that round to our advantage a little bit. But we are a really, really, really good live band. So though I do say so myself, I would say that, as I keep saying. The festivals that we've done this year have all been massively positive. We've gone down really well. We're getting rebooked. So yeah, it's really good. Really enjoying it.
You described yourself to me last week as kind of a journeyman, and and looking at your biographical stuff and doing as much research as I could possibly do on you. I mean, it is true. I mean, you've been in and out of bands for quite a while. Another band that you have been a pretty big part in, which is another band with a curiously long story, would be the Rezillos. This is a band out of Scotland. I mean, early first wave punk stuff, but it was kind of like, they were, they weren't the Clash, or they weren't like, stiff little fingers trying to, save the world or make a positive statement. They were at its very best, a great party band, not so unlike the B-52s were in the States.
Yeah.
And they had one album, and that was it for a long time. Tell me about playing with those guys, like Eugene and Faye, because I mean they're still both in it, right?
Yeah. It's quite a big hit rate of original members in the Rezillos, because we've got Eugene and Faye who are still there, and Angel Patterson is still on the drums at the back, and he's there since the very beginning. The three of them met at university in Edinburgh 40 odd years ago, however long it is. And it's a completely different thing. Like with Department S, I'm very invested in kind of writing the material, and now I'm fronting the band and blah blah blah, all this sort of thing. But we did quite a lot of dates supporting the Rezillos, and we were on the same bill here and there, and our paths kept crossing. And we did a tour with them back in, it was pre-COVID, back in 2000 and must have been 2018, I think it was. I've not got my dates sorted out in my head, but we did a tour with them, and unbeknownst to me, their then guitarist Jim Brady was leaving at the end of the tour. They'd not really told anyone, but he was leaving, and I think they sort of looked at me and gone, that guy can play it. And we all got on well, which is crucial in bands. You have to, as much as you want someone to be a great player, really you want to know, can you get on with them in the van?
Right.
And, so during the tour, I became aware that they were kind of looking at me for taking over. And which I went up to Scotland, did an audition. And again, same thing as they did with Department S. I thought, oh, brilliant, I'll go and play Top of the Pops with the actual Rezillos. And if they don't want me, it sort of doesn't matter. At least I've done that. I've got the job. And playing with the Rezillos is pretty much, see, I've got kind of a unique perspective on this, because not many people come in from the outside and get dropped in as a fan of the band. I mean, I bought my copy of Can't Stand My Baby when I was 11, I think, in the playground at school, 50p. So I got, when I first went up for it was like a little sort of audition, not an audition, certainly not a full band thing, because Ali, the drummer in Germany, so he's not always there. So they said, come up and we'll have a jam, just you and Faye and Eugene. Okay. And I ended up stood with a guitar in Eugene's living room, with him sat on one side, Faye sat on the other, and me stood in the middle while we do Top of the Pops and My Baby Loves Good Sculptures, with them singing on either side of me, and me just stood in the middle playing this song on an unplugged electric guitar, thinking, weirdest thing that has ever happened in my life. I'll never forget this if I live to be 100. And being dropped into the Rezillos is a bit like being dropped into the Bash Street Kids or something. It is as wacky as you would hope it is.
Well, that's encouraging to know, because I mean that's a band that just looked like so much fun to be a part of.
Oh, it is. It is. It's a bit. It's a lot of fun, but they keep you on your toes. I've done gigs with the Rezillos. I remember one in particular where we were going back on for the encore. I literally had my feet on the steps going up to the stage, and we still didn't know what we were going to play when we got there. And when we did get there, we played a song that we didn't even really know, and we just did it, and it was fine, and people went mad for it. But they do that. Eugene will like, right, do this now. Okay, and we do it. And I don't want to make it sound like it's unrehearsed, because it is all tightly rehearsed, but there's always kind of like an element of danger. Something's going to happen.
Yeah. But I mean, but as a musician and even as a fan, you're seeing them live, the unexpected has got to be so much fun. And that's kind of one of the things that, when you see a live band and they throw you a curveball that you do not expect, whether it's a cover song or a song that I haven't done in a while, or done in a way that's just totally, unique to the original. As a fan, I appreciate that. And I would think as a musician, you kind of do too.
It is great. It's a lot of fun. I was talking about that single that I bought when I was a kid. The B-side of that single was a version of "I Want to Be Your Man," the old Beatles song that I think the Stones
did. Yeah.
Be your lover, baby. I'll be your man. Da, 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 da. We were driving to a gig in, I think it was Northampton, and we'd stopped at a service station. And like a fool, I said, "Oh, do you never play I Want to Be Your Man?" It was the B-side of it. And I could just see Faye and Eugene suddenly look at each other and go, "Why don't we do that? Why don't we play that?" And I suddenly thought, "Oh, what have I done?" And we actually ended up playing it that night at the gig. We did it in the sound check, and they'd not played it in 40 years. It's like, these days, of course, you can just get a mobile phone out and listen to it and go, "Okay, it goes like that, right? Okay, yeah." And it was funny because we played it in the sound check pretty much note perfect, because I knew it. Pretty much note perfect. I had to apologize to the bass player. "Sorry, Chris, I sort of sprung on it. I didn't mean to." And he was, and so we played it pretty much note perfect. And then we spent an hour with everyone going, "Shall we change the arrangement?" And then we went through all these different arrangements. Like as if in an hour we're going to come up with a better arrangement than Lennon and McCartney did. Anyway, suffice to say that we put it back to the original by the end.
Well,
That's the kind of band the Rezillos are. We like to explore avenues, like put the chorus at the end.
So the Rezillos are one thing. They had their hits in the UK. It's a band that is largely kind of unknown here in the States. But you've also done some work with, and you talk about, Is Vic There being like the one song you got to do. You've also done work with the Vapors, which is again another band that had a bunch of great songs on their records, but they're known for just the one, and that's Turning Japanese. I mean, they could do that song 10 times during a show, and no one's going to get bored of that song. Tell me about the Vapors and playing with those guys.
Now, the Vapors are kind of completely different. Again, it's just kind of an illustration of how ostensibly playing in a band is playing in a band is playing in a band. No, that's not true. The difference is just amazing. And again, the Vapors thing came up because we'd done some work with them. Now, it's a bit different with the Vapors because I've not joined the band. I'm not in the band.
Right.
They have two original members currently. Dave Fenton is the guy that's the lead singer, and he wrote Turning Japanese and all the other songs that they've got. Most of the other songs they've got, I should say. And at the moment, the guy playing lead guitar is Dave's son, Dan, 25-year-old lad, fantastic guitar player, but also massively academically intelligent, and currently doing a PhD in something scientific that he has tried to explain to me, but I don't understand. But because Dan is doing this kind of research thing, he couldn't commit to all the gigs. So I got a phone call from their manager saying, and it was funny because at the time I was doing quite a lot with the Rezillos and quite a lot of stuff with Department S and writing for the album and whatnot. And I'd had a conversation with my wife, Annette, literally about 2 days before, and said, right, whatever comes, because I was like really busy, whatever comes in next, I'm going to say no. I'm not going to do it. It's just stupid. I've got too much to do. And we were driving. She was driving the car, and I was in a passenger when my phone went, and it was the manager of the Vapors going, would you be available to do something? I said, can I ring you, Matt? And I put the phone down, and she said, who is it? I said, it's the Vapors. She said, oh, you'll have to do it. You can't not. So, yes, I've been filling in, and the Vapors is it's an amazing band to work for, because yes, a lot of people would think we've just got that one song, and they'd done 2 albums back in the day that were really well received amongst a certain amount of people, and it seems that certain amount of people have all been waiting almost in a block for 40 years for them to come back, and they all turn up at all the gigs, and there's always like a massive amount of people there that you really wouldn't expect, and they all know all the words to all the songs.
Yep.
And there's a real Vapors family. They call them the Vapors family, and they all get on well with the band, are very generous with their time with the fans, and it's great working. But with the Vapors, it's very much, I massively underestimated how long it would take me to learn Vapors songs. They said to me, oh, we got these gigs in 6 months, and like an idiot, I left it till about 3 weeks before the gig. I started learning songs, and I thought, and there's a lot of backing vocals as well. I thought, oh, these are really hard. These are really tricky songs to learn. But I kind of managed it. But everything is very tightly arranged and tightly done with the Vapors, and you got to have it right, because those people in that audience are listening for every sonic detail, and you get it wrong at your peril.
That's it. I was reading more about the Vapors, and there's a lot that I didn't know. I mean, I knew the songs, I knew the records, I even had the first one, and the one with Turning Japanese on it, and what I didn't even realize is this is a band that was basically discovered by Bruce Foxton from the Jam, and at one point, early in their career, they're being managed by Paul Weller's father, who had been managing the Jam all along, and ironically, if you played Turning Japanese in the States, everyone gets in their feet and starts dancing. But if you played something from All Mod Cons or sound effects from the Jam, people are saying, "What band is this?" It's like the band that gets discovered by the bigger band in the UK is actually bigger in the States than the Jam, which is always one of those situations like it doesn't make any sense how they jumped over the Jam in here in the US.
But that can be the strength of one song, can't it?
Unbelievable.
And it is. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a great bit of footage on YouTube of Dave Grohl talking about Turning Japanese. Obviously, this is from quite a while ago, because he's talking about Taylor Hawkins. I think used to have a covers band. I can't think what they were called, but they did covers, and Dave used to get up and play with them. And Turning Japanese is one of the songs that they did, and Dave Grohl was going, oh, and you just think it's this song that just goes Turning Japanese. It's so hard to play. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Dave. But it does have that kind of sort of. He's definitely got a cachet over there in the States.
Without a doubt. In fact, all the bands that we've talked about, the Chameleons and the Ruts and the Rezillos and even Department S, that's like the one song that basically trumps all of it.
That crossed over.
It really does. It's remarkable the legs that thing has had. But
and the funny thing is with it, and this is true of, I mean, I try not to use the dreaded term one-hit wonder, because it's so disparaging, isn't it, to bands? And yet here I am in 3 bands that could possibly be described as. but the thing is with that, and it's true of a lot of big hits for bands like that. It's not even their best song. It's not even anywhere near their best song. That's the thing. It wasn't until I started to investigate the catalogue, because I was going to have to learn some of these things, that I thought some of these songs are really, really good. I mean, Turning Japanese is really good, but some of them are really, really,
really good. Yeah.
And there's a guy I used to play in actually he now plays bass with us in Department S, Mike Lee, who's been a fan of the Vapors forever. And he kept saying to me, you need to listen to this stuff. And I kind of like, I don't understand how this passed me by back in the day, but
yeah,
he knew, I didn't.
So the new album by Department S is I mean, it's Burned Down Tomorrow. That's the title track.
Yeah.
When is that coming out? I mean, how far are we away from? I mean, I know there's been like so many delays, COVID and supply and demand and pressing issues. I mean, they're all leading into massive delays. How much of that has affected getting this album out?
Yeah, it was a funny one with the album. I mean, this has turned into kind of like almost like the second Stone Roses album in how long it's taken to put together. We started recording it before lockdown happened. We actually started, I think, in the September. Before that would be September 2019. Fortunately, we were kind of started doing it in a studio near where I live, and we got a lot of the drums down. So once the world began to open up a little bit, I was kind of, the great thing about recording studios where global pandemics are concerned is that once you can like put one person in a recording studio, and then you've got the guy who's doing the producing or the engineering or whatever, and they can be in separate rooms with like 6 foot of glass between them. It's almost like a recording purpose built for social distancing. So I was able to get back in after a while, still observing the rules and just kind of sitting in one room with the guy sat in the room talking to each other through microphones. But it took a long time to put together. We were putting tracks together that we didn't have drum tracks for. We had to put the drums on last, which is not normally the way you would work. It went through quite a torturous process, and then we had to wait quite a while before we could, because in the UK people were not able to travel from different parts of the country for a long time. I'm not really sure what it was like in the States, but Eddie was not able to come up and do the vocals for quite a time, and then he did, and then he left the band. And then we decided to carry on, basically because we have there's an artistic reason and a really prosaic reason. Artistically, we think it's the best thing we've ever done, but also we've self-financed the album, so you're thinking it's got to come out because we need to get it out there and recoup some of the recording costs. Right. So yeah, we've now gone back to the drawing board with the vocals, at least, which are now almost complete as well. There's a couple of tracks we've got to tweak. We hope it's going to be out. It won't be until, let's say, the spring, maybe.
Okay.
2023, which would, hopefully.
Now, I have to, selfishly ask, I mean, is there any talk of maybe coming to the States to tour with this or to be a part of another festival here in the U.S.?
There is actually, and we've. I think I'm allowed to say this.
Just go ahead.
We've got a contract with an American record label that do a lot of legacy stuff, Renaissance Records, who are re-releasing the last album first in February, and there's a contract on the table for the new album as well. And part of what they do, as well as releasing albums, is that we'll put tours together for acts. Now, our drummer, Simon Bowley, who plays with us with the band at the moment, is also the drummer for Eddie and the Hot Rods. I don't know if you're aware of Eddie.
Yep.
And there is talk of us doing a sort of double header tour across Europe, and hopefully, fingers crossed, getting over to the States at some point and doing that.
So is he going to sit in? Is he going to sit in with both bands? Because I mean, yeah, that'll kill a guy.
Yeah, well, If you Google Simon and have a look at him, the guy, one of his arms is like both of my legs put together. He can do it. He's a powerful guy.
Well, yeah, Phil, it's so good to talk to you. I mean, it's been a lot of fun getting to be reacquainted with some of these bands that are just so damn great. The Department S new single, "Burn Down Tomorrow," was so good. I can't wait for the album, and I can't wait till you come out to the States. I'd love to see you guys.
Well, we're going to get, there's another single coming out off it. There probably will be 2 more singles come out before the album comes out, but the next one we're looking at releasing is a track called "So Far Away," which is the track that Baz Warne from the Stranglers guests on. And it's one of the songs I'm most pleased with the way it's turned out. It's yeah, well, I would say that. I keep saying that, but yeah.
But you should say that. You should never go out in an interview and say, "Yeah, I'm not real crazy about what we just did." Oh, no, it's not good. It's not good. Don't buy it.
I'm absolutely. This is absolutely the opposite. I'm absolutely. This is the best stuff we've ever done, and the honor of having these guys play on it is great as well. So watch out for that. I'll send you that as soon as I'm able to.
That'd be great.
Hopefully you'll be able to play that. Yeah, but yeah, and it's fingers crossed for the States. Hopefully we can get out there, because to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the Department has ever been to the States. I don't think they've ever made it.
Well, then it's long overdue.
Hope so.
Absolutely. Phil, so great to meet you, and best of luck with the album. Can't wait to hear it.
Thank you very, very much for having us on.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Phil.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
The name of the upcoming album by Phil Thompson, Department S, is called "Burn Down Tomorrow." It comes out the spring of next year. You can hear the title track on their website, YouTube, and Spotify. Thanks for listening to Baxi's Musical Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like it, share it, tell all your friends about it. You can reach me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. And thanks again for listening to Baxi's Musical Podcast.